And we should be live. Let's see, does it say live?
It says we
It
are.
says we're live. So hey, so here we go.
If I can find it. Yep, definitely
Yep.
on. Let me share
Yep.
it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a little bit of sharing too. This is like just really scrambled the way it's doing it, man. It used to be it will launch right in my Firefox browser. What's up?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Yeah, I got to use.
Oh, I got this today.
Oh, wow.
Bonsai tree.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah.
Just trying to get it shared.
Yeah, I'm trying. Let's see. Okay. But the thing is, I got to change the permissions.
Right.
Because I don't know why it's doing this. It says it just goes to friends, but now it's public. It's everybody. And so not just our friends, but even our enemies can see us now.
Yes. Yes.
which that's important because we want them to see us. We I forget who said it, but the old adage is there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Right.
And I'm gonna run with that today.
Yeah.
Gonna run with that.
Now, Derek, why would we get any bad publicity, bro?
No, I mean, why? Yeah, exactly. Who would give us bad press? I mean, we're just a couple of swell guys doing a swell work, and right. So Aaron, what are you drinking today before we introduce the topic? Let's introduce our.
So I'm doing fancy today. I am doing a cocktail called Le Grand Louis, which is Grand Marnier with dry vermouth and some orange bitters, and it's pretty good.
Nice. I'm doing a whiskey sour, and it is made with Bulleit bourbon.
Good.
So that's where we're rocking today.
Right on.
So anyway, we went basically to the 11th hour without a topic this week. But then we got together and said, okay, what are we going to do? And so Aaron, since this was one of yours, please feel free to go ahead, introduce it, and let's take us into the holiest of holies here.
Yeah, so I saw an article that my niece, Harley Manlove, I don't know if she ever watches these, but she posted an article from, I think it was Time magazine, about Christian nationalism as it related to January 6th. And so I posted that in the religious trauma group, and David DeAndre commented some things that really got me thinking. I mean, really shined some light on some stuff for me. So I want to talk about this Christian nationalism and how victimhood, the sense of being a victim.
Hang on for just a second.
You bet.
A Netgear. Yeah, Netgear extender. Sorry about that. We had some major Wi-Fi issues today, and I was in the middle of a call, and a very important call, and it just a Zoom call, and it just dropped. And so now my son, he wants to buy a range extender for his space upstairs. But anyway, go ahead, man. You were saying.
So just talking about how victimization plays a role in white Christian nationalism in America, and how that might relate to wherever the topic goes, wherever the discussion goes.
You know what? I think that's funny because the Republicans in Congress voted not to have a 9/11 style commission concerning this. Now, mind you, the 9/11 commission was to study the effects of terrorism on the United States. And this was a terrorist act. Make no mistake. This is a terrorist act. It was an act of sedition. It was an act of treason.
Mhm.
And here's the thing that people don't realize is that what if it was successful?
Right.
If it were successful, we would have seen the vice president of the United States hanging from a gallows between the steps of the Capitol and the Lincoln or the and the Washington Monument. You got to understand how serious this is, because it's one thing for them to say, okay, we're going to hang Nancy Pelosi. Okay, I get that. You know, Republicans don't like her, but Mike Pence is their guy. He is one of their guys.
Right.
And you're going to hang this dude? Come on, man.
Yeah. I think it's, one thing that's interesting is, I'm just taking that in for a minute, Derek. It could have gone completely differently. And I remember watching it live and just really being traumatized in the same way I was when 9/11 happened,
Oh yeah.
because you didn't know what was going on inside that building. You didn't know what was happening or what was going on. But one thing you know for sure, there was Trump flags everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There was Jesus saves signs
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There were crosses everywhere. And the people that broke in to, I can't remember if it was the House or the Senate, but on the floor of the House and the Senate, they're praying prayers in Jesus' name and taking Holy Communion. So this was a Christian, Republican, Trump supporting act of sedition and terrorism to kill Nancy Pelosi and probably AOC and
Oh yeah.
Mike Pence.
And what's funny is there, I forget what, Representative Clyde from Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
He says this was just that this was a patriotic act and these were just tourists. Then they showed a video of this guy in his office with one of his assistants that had a gun trained on the door while other guys were barricading the door. Now, I don't know about you, Aaron, but I don't remember ever having to barricade my door for tourists. I'm just saying.
See, this is what's so crazy to me, that they vote against the commission and stuff, because these guys were also being terrorized. They were the victims in this thing.
Yeah.
But because of their being beholden to not Trump, but Trump's followers.
Well, not just Trump's followers, but Trump. Trump actually threatened Republicans, and they have acquiesced to him specifically. Is not just the base of Republicans, because I want to believe that there are still some sane Republicans out there. But let me say this for the record. I got to get this off my chest, because I put it in a post, and I'm going to say it here while we're live so that everybody can hear. Because if you're still a Republican now, after all of this, fuck you. Honestly, listen. I will love you from a safe distance. Just like I love electricity, but I don't want to be around 50,000 volt high tension lines. I love electricity, but I don't want to be downrange of a nuclear power plant. I will love you from a distance. I'll love you. I'll have empathy and compassion for you, but I will not fuck with you. If you're still a Republican right now after all of this, no, I'm done. Serious.
Yeah. You know who Frank Luntz is, right? He's the pollster that worked a lot on Fox News. He did the focus groups. For people that don't know, he did the focus groups on Fox News during debates and things like that. I've heard a couple of interviews with him, and I find it incredibly fascinating. I think he's incredibly insightful, very conservative, but definitely not in favor of the shit show. And one podcast I heard, said he was in England because he was trying to get as far away from the U.S. as possible. But he had a really good insight, Derek. He said that the Republican Party is in between a rock and a hard place, in that the majority of Republicans think like Donald Trump, and the majority of center right American, center left, I guess, Republicans or center right independents can't stand him. And so he said, here's the pickle that they're in. He said, they can't win. He said, you can't win a primary election without Donald Trump. You can't win a general election with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty insightful.
That is pretty much spot on. This is the thing. I really believe, and I said this earlier today, that Donald Trump is not going to go down in history as the guy who killed fundamentalist evangelical Christianity. What he is going to go down in history as is the guy who exposed it for what it really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's not a cause of it. He's just the most glaring result of it. Because this shit really has been going on for a long time. This has been brewing. You know, we talk about sipping tea, and this pot of tea, for you Tea Party folks, this pot of tea has been brewing for some time now. It's just now reached a full rolling crescendo boil. And what it's doing, and y'all hear me, that this is going to be the thing that destroys Christianity once and for all. We are watching the downfall, just like how we watch the fall of the Iron Curtain and the statues of Stalin and Lenin being toppled down. We're watching the same thing with American Christianity. We're watching the same thing.
Yeah, and for the reason you suggest that it's been exposed. So let me give you my hypothesis around this.
Okay.
Because we all know, and I'm speaking specifically to white evangelical Christians. That was my people forever.
Yeah.
They have a persecution complex, but it was always sort of under the surface. You know, they're taking down the 10 Commandments, they're taking prayer out of school, they're, you know, whatever. And so you have the most privileged, prominent group of people in the United States of America who are playing, through this persecution complex, the role of the victim. And I think what Donald Trump did, and I think one of the reasons, this is my hypothesis, Derek, one of the reasons, it's multifaceted, but one of the reasons there was so much resonance between President Trump and evangelical Christians, because I couldn't get it. I couldn't figure it out. What is it about this guy? He's not even likable. He's not even charismatic. Like, he's certainly nothing like Jesus or
not
like
godly. Exactly.
Church.
Yeah.
Yeah. You wore, and I remember in 2016, before the election, I was making people mad because I was saying, come on, you wore Bill Clinton out for getting a blowjob in the Oval Office or whatever.
Yeah.
But Hillary, the candidate on the other side in 2016, she stood by her man. She did exactly what, and I've shared this on this broadcast before, but she did exactly what your family values, what you tell women every day in your church when you're counseling them in the same situation. She stayed with him. She stood by her man. So she's actually upholding your family values and your convictions, whereas Donald Trump has the tapes released where, you know, when you're a celebrity, you can just walk up to women and grab them by the pussy and they'll let you do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't get it, but this made sense for me today. It's what resonated was the victim mentality, or the victim identity, which I'll talk about a little bit later, that the Christian group has, because Donald Trump played the ultimate victim the whole time he was in office.
Yeah.
And those two things, I think, fit together very, very nicely for them, for those two, for the white evangelical church and the way Donald Trump profiled himself. And you throw the impeachment hearings on top of that.
Yeah.
Oh, they're persecuting him.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of the resonance came from.
And here's the thing. It's funny how the bully always cries foul as a justification for his bullying. That somehow I've been wrong. I'm the victim here. And that's what's going on with this. Basically, prayer in school. Let's start with that. People talk about Madeline Murray O'Hare and the prayer in school issue. And honestly, there's no way that you'll take prayer out of school. You know why? Because every time there's a test, there's prayer in school. Every time some guy goes to ask some girl out to a dance, there's prayer in school. Every time there is a football, basketball, or baseball game, there's prayer in school.
Right.
And the reality is that nobody's taking prayer out of school. You can't take prayer out of school as long as people believe and they're able to aggregate their beliefs. That'll never happen. And then you say, okay, well, let's take the 10, or they cry, well, you're taking the 10 commandments out. All right, guys, is it law or grace?
Yeah, come on. The grace teachers did the same thing, right?
They did the same thing. And that really blew my mind. Oh, we're not under law, we're under grace, but you can't take the 10 commandments out. Yeah. And it's insane how they have this, you said it, a persecution complex that, oh, woe is me. They're trying to take away my ability to impose my beliefs on everybody else. That's the quintessential Republican battle cry, or evangelical or right-wing battle cry. In other words, it's not that you're trying to stop me from worshiping or stop me from praying. You're trying to stop me from forcing my views on you. How dare you?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So, I'm a therapist, so I look at these things in relationships and psychology. But then you can extrapolate it out to the group, right? So there is a thing in psychology called a victim identity. So everybody's a victim sometime in their life, multiple times in their life. We all get victimized by somebody stealing from us, messing up our reputation, what we've talked about before, hurt versus harm, right? And people harm us in many, many different ways. And some people have been horribly traumatically victimized. Some people have been systemically victimized. Some people have been economically victimized. So there is victimhood out there, but a victim identity is not out there.
Right.
So if I'm victimized by some force outside myself, somebody breaks into my house and robs me, somebody beats me up, whatever, that's outside of me. But a victim identity is a governing frame of reference. And this is the key I want everybody to get: a governing frame of reference about your sense of self that comes from within. So here's what this means. Subconsciously, that identity frame is so big and so powerful that every circumstance and situation in life gets filtered through the lens of the victim. No matter, and it does not matter. And because this thing is in you, and because it's a subconscious frame and it's a governing frame, it governs the way you see the world. It governs the way you experience the world. So no amount of contrary evidence is going to tell you differently, because this is not a conscious thing. This is not something that comes out of reason and rationale, in other words. Right. So it can't be reasoned with. So in a toxic, abusive relationship, or any kind of manipulative relationship, if you have someone with a victim identity, they will never take responsibility for their actions. They will never take responsibility for change. If you try to hold them accountable, what they will do is they will say, oh, I'm such a horrible person and life has been so hard. So this guy, that has this victim identity, life is just harder for you than everybody else. You just get picked on more than everybody else. You have the Charlie Brown complex, right? Lucy's always moving the football, no matter. And every time you try to go kick it, Lucy's moving
the ball. Yep.
there was a guy, I'll say this and then I'll turn it over to you, but there was a guy in the 70s, I can't remember his name right now. I had it before the broadcast, I can't remember it, but he wrote a book called I'm Okay, You're Okay. And it was a bestseller for a number of years in the
God,
70s.
I remember that.
Yeah. And the church got all lathered up about that. You know, that was that psychobabble, whatever. It's actually based on what's called transactional analysis therapy, which would be fascinating to get into sometime too. But the idea is, I'm okay, you're okay. Well, the person with the victim identity frame, I'm not okay. They write the book. Their book is, I'm not okay, and you're even more not okay.
Right. I'm
Because if
okay.
I'm the
You're
victim, you're the bully. You're the
yeah.
bully. You're the bad guy.
I'm okay. You're fucked up.
No, I'm not okay because I'm a victim. Life's like, you're hurting
Right.
me.
Yeah.
So the way this
Well,
plays out in the group, your rights are being violated. If you have this mindset, your rights are being violated if you're asked to wear a mask during a global pandemic.
mm,
Your rights are being violated if, I mean, that's a perfect example of it right there. I mean, that was just, your rights are being violated to take a vaccine. Like, and this goes back into something else that we talked about, Derek, this whole idea of trust, right? With Christianity, because in Christianity, I just came on like a light bulb for me. Somebody's always out to get you. The devil's out to get you. The evil other out there is out to get you, to stop you from preaching the gospel, or like exactly what you said, enforcing your views on other people. So this whole victim thing is, I think, a big component of this. So I'll throw it back to you.
no, I mean, yeah, I mean, oh, it was Thomas Anthony Harris who wrote the book, right?
Yeah.
I took advantage of two screens here to look it up.
Thank you.
But the thing, like, okay, I'm okay, you're okay. That basically said that okay, you know, we all have issues, but at the end of the day, we're all okay. We just need to work through the nuances of things. But the bully never agrees that you're okay. That's why I was saying, I'm okay, you're fucked up. That's the mentality of this group, of this type of group think, because I'm in the right. I'm just trying to live my life, enforce my views, and you're stopping me from doing that. In other words, no fair. I'm trying to take over, but you're stopping me. And that's insane when you think about it. And watch how all of this plays out with the Republican Party and the whole conservative apparatus. This whole voting situation, they're mad because you know, like in places like Alabama and Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, voter intimidation has been a way of life in these places. That black folks, brown folks, they get out and they go to vote, and they're told that the polls are closed, or they're told that they can't be here. They're told that their identification is improper, all of these different things, right? And so they do this to get people to not vote, to disenfranchise them. But because of the pandemic, states had to make some really expedient decisions about how the vote would take place. And that took away all of the voter intimidation. And this is why in the South, particularly, that black votes turned out in record numbers, because now there was no barrier to the vote, to exercising the franchise. Now, there are some states, Washington State, I think Montana, Oregon, that they have mail-in ballots as a way of life.
Colorado, we're that way here in Colorado.
Okay, Colorado's another. So you can just get a mail-in ballot, or you can go in. You can choose. So why not make that universal? I mean, we are living in a technological age where, I mean, let's take away something like, people were saying, okay, why don't we vote online? Well, we don't vote online because that is absolutely fragile right now. It's not military grade secure. And the 2016 election was a proof of that, right? So, and until we get to that point, we can't vote online, but we can vote by mail.
Mhm.
And I don't see a problem with that.
No.
But the Republicans are doing everything to upset the voting franchise. Why? Because they understand that if people, and I forget who it was, there was some Republican bigwig that said that if people are allowed to vote, we will lose elections.
Mhm.
And again, it's they're doing this from a standpoint of victimhood. They're
Mhm.
saying, oh, you see, if we just let people vote any kind of way, we're going to lose elections. Oh, woe is us.
Mhm.
We're going to, we're the victims here, y'all. But no, what it is that now people who had been victimized, who have been genuinely victimized, who have been genuinely oppressed and genuinely disenfranchised, now they have the franchise that they can actually go and vote without any impediment. What's wrong with that? That's the thing. And so this whole thing about I remember this. I'll say this and then I'm gonna kick it back to you.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm
When
looking something up as you're talking, so take your time.
when Barack Obama got elected,
Mhm.
shortly after that was when this whole Tea Party thing came into being.
Mhm.
And the whole Tea Party premise was we need to take our country back.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I
I
know.
remember
I know.
because at that point I was still a Republican, but I voted for Barack Obama the first time because of
Mhm.
what he represented to my 5 Black sons.
Right. Understand that.
That this was a way of saying that the promise of America could truly be fulfilled all the way up to and including the presidency of the United States. Now, take our country back from whom?
I know. It was plain as
Who,
the nose on your face.
right? Who took your country? Who took your I'm going to say something really harsh, really crude here, and I don't give 2 fucks. Actually, I don't even give a fuck. But it's this: that there were a lot of people that were mad because there was a nigger in the White House. That's really what the deal is. And so take our country back was a way of saying that, okay, we let them vote, we gave them civil rights, we eliminated Jim Crow, we eliminated slavery. What more do you want? Oh, you want the presidency of the United? Oh no, you can't go that far. No, son, you done gone too far here. You need to get back, Jack.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. So
Yep.
all of this, the whole Trump phenomenon, because here, this is the thing that white evangelicals wanted the anti-Obama.
Mhm.
It's like Jeb Bush was not, that was not far enough. Lindsey Graham even was not far enough. John Kasich, not far enough. But Donald Trump, he's going to get out and publicly say what we've been thinking for a long time.
Mhm.
And I say this, and this at this point I'm going to shut up. That when speaks your mind is good when you are a statesman like Thomas P. Tip O'Neill. Speaks your mind is good when you are Pierre DuPont. Speaks your mind is good when you're Edmund Jerry Brown. But speaks your mind coming from Donald Trump is your drunk fucking uncle at the family reunion who's got some shit to say about what Denise and David did. I'm gonna shut up there.
No, that's a great illustration. I wanted to find this because this was in the article. You mentioned the quote here. So this, I'm just going to pick up and read the article quote here. It says, consider the most infamous articulation of Christian nationalism's anti-democratic goals from Paul Weyrich, co-founder of the Moral Majority, and an oft-repeated 1980 speech to a group of evangelical leaders. Weyrich explained, quote, now many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome, good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They have never been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting population goes down.
That's the quote.
Now, if that was true in 1980, basically what he's saying is we need to suppress the vote because we can't win in an honest election. If that was true back then, how much more true is it now?
Right.
Because that population is shrinking, right? We're becoming more diverse as a country. We're becoming more open and accepting as a country. But what I mean by that is in the general majority feeling and thinking in this country based on numbers, not based on region.
Yep.
And this is where the Electoral College, I think, is kind of fucked up. I
It
didn't used to
is.
think that. I used to advocate for the Electoral College.
I did too. Every good Republican does.
But Colorado did something interesting. They had an initiative on the ballot this year, this last election, 2020, that in future presidential elections, the Electoral College votes will go to the winner of the popular vote.
And that's the way it should be. I mean, if you're going to have the Electoral College.
Yeah.
So that the popular vote drives.
How they're trying to kind of transform it by getting around the Constitution to try, because I think about it, 8 or 9 million people more in our country voted for Joe Biden in this last election. And the Republicans, correct me if I'm wrong, Derek, but they haven't won a popular vote since George H.W. Bush.
Yeah, that was the last time.
They haven't won a popular vote this century.
Nope. I pulled up something here because I remember back when I was involved in Republican politics, and I knew this guy. I met this guy, Lee Atwater, and he was the architect of the modern Republican strategy, and he was famous because he was a guitarist, and he gave George H.W. Bush a guitar that said the prayers on it, and that was a big deal. But this is what Lee Atwater said, and this was let me see, when was this? He said this back in 1981. And this is harsh, but this is what I'm going to read it verbatim. It says, you start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger. That hurts you. It backfires. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff, and you're getting so abstract. Now you're talking about cutting taxes, and all these things that you're talking about are totally economic things, and a byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. We want to cut this. Is more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than nigger, nigger. Now, this is a guy that was the head of the Republican National Committee and the architect of the modern Republican strategy, and they have followed that playbook to the letter ever since.
Translate that a little bit. Put that a little bit more in like practical layman's terms. What's he saying there?
What he's saying is
when he's talking about cutting, cutting funding,
cutting taxes, cutting programs. When you talk about cutting government programs that are designed to level the playing field, that are designed to help the disenfranchised or the disempowered or the oppressed, that's what he's talking about. And if you talk about these things, and small government, right? Small government is a code word for saying, let's turn the responsibility for these things back to the states. Now, the states' rights thing goes back to the Civil War, which states' rights was a code word for the preservation of the institution of slavery. That
Right.
was the states' right that they were trying to preserve ostensibly in the Civil War. So when you start talking about all of these abstract things like cutting program and forced busing and all of these things, it is a more palatable form of racism than being outright saying nigger, nigger, nigger. And y'all please excuse me for using that word because I don't. But this is the it's the peg in the sand. It's the tent peg of conservatism. Because it isn't about small government. Because here, if we were talking about small government, then the size of government under Republicans would decrease. But the size of government in every Republican administration has grown. And we talk about fiscal responsibility. Fiscal responsibility says we're going to spend less than what we take in. But that's not been the case. Spending, deficits, debt has all increased under Republican administrations than under Democrats. That is an empirical truth. Now, why is all of this important? Because what it proves is that Democrats are more, and I'm not saying this to pick political sides, because I'm going to say this too, that the Democrat Party is just as fucked up as the Republican Party, but that this whole thing about the Democrats have been more efficient with the money that they take in than the Republicans have. And that's it. So all of this, you know, we talk about again, to say, Republicans say we want school choice, we want vouchers and things like that. What they're saying is they want to be able to opt out of public schools and send their kids to like satellites of Bob Jones University, who prohibited interracial dating, who prohibited blacks from participating in student government, and all of these things. So basically, we can have these schools that are separate from the public schools, but we're getting funding by the government so that we can further advance our racist agenda. And when you start talking about taking that away, then it's like, oh, I'm the victim here because my tax dollars are being forced to participate in things that I don't want to. Like they say, they'll say things like, okay, like Texas is saying they are not going to teach critical race theory. They introduced some legislation that was signed by Gregory Abbott that they're not going to teach that. So what they're saying is that we're going to bury our head in the sand and ignore the real history of this country and just teach our whitewashed version of it. And this is how we're going to express our tax dollars in education. And the thing is that people are crying out because they're saying, oh, you can't teach that because that's going to make my kids feel bad. Well, it's not designed to make the 1619 curriculum, for example, is not designed to make your kids feel bad. The idea is to teach the history of this country for what it really is and stop trying to whitewash it. But when you say, you know, we want to do this, we want to fund this, then the right wingers, they cry foul because they're used to bullying people and determining what the curriculum is. You know that the curriculum of 50% of the public schools in the United States is dictated by the Daughters of the Confederacy. That is a true fact. Because they go and screen textbooks and they'll go back to school boards and they lobby, they're powerful, they have money, they have influence, they have speakers and all of this stuff. And they'll go back and they'll say to a school district that this textbook that you're suggesting is unfair to the Confederacy. Man, fuck the Confederacy. You lost, goddammit. That's it.
Yeah.
You lost. Deal with it. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, man, it's good. It's good. I'm glad you're sharing this stuff, Derek, because this is information people need to know. Because here's our problem. Here's another problem we have in our country. I think only about 2/3 of the people, like we had the biggest turnout in the history of a general election. I'm sure because mail-in voting was allowed, it was easier for people to vote. And also because we were in the middle of a fucking pandemic and people actually cared about what the government was doing because it was affecting their lives. So I think twofold. But at the end of the day, when I looked at it, I think only 2/3 of the country voted that were eligible.
Eligible, yeah, right.
So you have a problem in this country of very undereducated people. And I mean, you're talking about education, but we've got very undereducated people, and that permits this sort of imbalance of power in some ways. And here's one of the ways that it happens. There's 1/3 of the country. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's easier to vote than ever before, and 1/3 of those eligible don't vote. Like, so literally, when we're talking about Trump supporters, we're talking about 1/3 of the country, and all the polls bear this out: 35%, 33%. It's always in the 30s. It's never more than like 1/3 of the country. But here's the scary thing. You're talking about legislation in Texas. You're talking about legislation in, you kind of alluded to the legislation in Georgia and Florida that's limiting voting access. And I don't even know, and I pay attention. Like I on purpose pay attention, and I don't even know what all kind of screwy shit they're doing down there to mess with the elections and suppress votes. And if I don't know, Derek, and I tend to be one of the more informed people, probably in our
I would say
country
so.
comparatively. And if I don't even know what's in those things, those aren't my states, but I understand those are the states that are in play. Right?
Yep.
Texas was in play. I mean, if the Republicans lose Texas, it's game over in any presidential election.
Yep.
Because they've already got California and New York. If they lose Texas, I mean, I'm sorry, the Democrats already have California and New York. So if the Republicans lose Texas, it's game over.
Game over.
Here's the scary thing. They do these things during, and nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. Nobody knows what legislation's being passed and what laws are being passed that are really affecting their lives. I talk to neighbors who don't fill out their census because they don't even understand that the census is how they structure the House of Representatives and the Electoral College. So my point in all this, I guess that I'm trying to make is, I'm trying to think of the best way to make this or how to make this. I come from a family where education was important, which is part of my white privilege. And I don't mean that offensive to anybody. I'm just saying we had access traditionally down through history in America to more education than some of your ancestors had access to. Is that fair?
Yep.
And we acquired wealth through various different means that your ancestors did not have the capability to acquire.
That is correct.
So I am born in, so we can afford college. And I'm born into a family, every single one of both my parents went to college. All my aunts and uncles went to college. My sisters went to college. My cousins went to college. And I'm not saying college is where it's at right now, but I hope people can follow my point. Derek, not graduating high school was not even an option for me.
Right.
Not going into the college prep program in my high school was not even an option. They had 3 different tracks. You know, they had like the career track, the general sort of education track, and the college prep track. I didn't even have to think about it. I was just automatically in the college education or college prep track. And there was a basic understanding of how these things worked from a civics perspective and a financial perspective that my parents, in business sense, that my parents were able to give me because they had run business. My grandpa had run a business. My other grandpa had run a ranch. I mean, I was just surrounded by this, right? So this is stuff that's caught and not taught. So when I started pastoring and pastoring in a community, we don't have hardly any Black representation in our community at all. It's less than 1%. And then we've got about 50-50 split between just whites like me and Latinos. But working in these areas where they were lower socioeconomic, there were lower socioeconomics taking place, there was also a lower degree of knowledge available to them about how certain things in the world works. But there was also this. I remember sitting down with an underprivileged couple and doing counseling, premarital counseling. And I said, what are your goals? And they said, well, we want to make sure both of our kids finish high school.
Wow.
And I about fell out on the floor. And then they said, maybe we'd like to someday be able to buy a house. And but they didn't understand credit rating. They didn't understand how to build credit. They didn't understand the mortgage process. And my point is, nobody in their family had gone to college. One of the things, the university that I work at, 1/3 of our graduates are first generation college graduates. 1/3
Wow.
is first generation college graduates. And so when you're talking about these social programs and you're talking about education and you're talking about the whitewashing of education, and I'm talking about white privilege, that I was born into white privilege because I had access to all this stuff that just subconsciously, I mean, can you understand what I'm saying?
Oh,
That
yeah.
other people didn't have. And so when you take away social programs and when you fuck with education, you really are keeping a people down so that you can stay in power.
And that's it. There are so many things that and I say this all the time, that, and this is another one's going to be controversial, but I'm going to say this, is that people talk about reverse racism, and I'm going to say something, that Black people in America do not have the ability to be racist.
Right.
They can be prejudiced for sure. They can even be bigoted, absolutely. But racism is when you are able to express your prejudice or bigotry with social, political, or economic power.
Mhm.
None of which do Blacks or Latinos have in this country.
Mhm.
And so the deck is stacked against minorities. It's against the disenfranchised. It's against the oppressed. The deck is stacked.
Mhm.
And when people, it blows my mind. So when you said, hey, let's talk about this, I was like, dude, I'm all in, because the reality is the people who are complaining the most about losing the most aren't losing anything.
Exactly.
And I want to say this too before I kick the can back over to you, is that basically well, I just had a brain fart. I hate when that happens. But anyway, basically, when you don't have anything, well, let me say this. We're taught economics by definition. This is the thought. This is my thought. Okay, it came back to me. Thank you. That we're taught, like, economics is the science of studying the allocation of scarce resources.
Mm.
That is the dictionary definition of economics.
Mhm.
Now, we start from the mindset of scarcity,
Mhm.
that the pie is finite.
Mhm.
And that if the pie is finite, that means that if I get more, you get less.
Mhm.
which even if we deal from the standpoint of a finite pie, if I get more and you get less, you had more than enough to begin with.
Mhm.
So you abdicating part of the pie, to me, is not really hurting you or harming you in any way. But my submission here is that the pie is not finite.
Mhm.
The pie is actually pretty infinite.
Mhm.
And the fact that I, as a Black person, gets more does not necessarily mean that you get less as a white person.
Right.
And that's the point. That's exactly the point, man. I'm so grateful when these things, you have a moment of
Yeah.
clarity, in the midst of a brain fart.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, we have to first of all get past the scarcity mindset that says that if I lose this much, or better yet, not even say if I lose this much, that if someone else gains this much, that I lose a corresponding amount. And that's not the truth.
Yeah.
That's
It's
the
a good
point
way.
that I'm getting at.
That's a good way to put it. I think, I think my point in this, and I know we need to kind of bring this to a close, but it seems to me the more we talk, Derek, that I think for white people, when we talk about racism, we only hear judging someone by their skin color.
Mhm.
That's all we hear, which is bigotry,
Right.
prejudice, that kind of
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
We don't have the, I don't want to say we don't have the capacity. I want to say, and I'm doing this because I think there needs to be these kinds of conversations, man. And so, it's the only way that we heal. That's the only way that we fix this. But
Right.
the way I'm seeing it now is it really is more than that, in the sense that it's about the power dynamics within a culture and within a society. So you can't
Yep.
really resolve the racial tensions in our country without examining the dynamics and interplay of power within our society, which is why I think, if I can say this, that there's this conflict that we saw on display with George Floyd and many others, too many, in 2020, between the police department and Black people, because it's a power dynamic.
Mhm.
You carry a badge, you carry a gun, you drive a fast car, you literally have a license to kill.
Yep.
And this group of people over here doesn't. And I don't think we talk about that enough. I think, and I'm saying from my perspective as a white person, I don't think we talk about that enough, because I don't think that is on anybody's radar, and they get triggered so quickly. Like if I say white privilege, they get triggered very easily. And you say racism, well, and they always bring out, oh, well, I've got Black friends or whatever. I've got,
Yeah.
kind of the token one to prove I'm not
Right.
racist or whatever, without understanding the power dynamics. And then with that is the education piece. The education piece is really big. And it's one of the reasons I love doing these with you, because if you don't have, well, I'll give you a different example. This one's not a racial example. We had a few families that came through our church who were Amish.
Mhm.
So they grew up with wagons and no electricity and outhouses and all that stuff, right? And then in the Amish community they were part of, you get a year as a young person to go out and experience the outside world. And if you just sort of sow your wild oats, and if you want to go be part of that world, you can, but you're completely excommunicated from the community, including your families.
Wow.
And so we had families that came in that had been excommunicated. And Derek, they did not have a clue, not a clue, how the world worked in the exchange of power, and economics or resources is one of those dynamics, right? And so the point I was trying to make, I'm not sure I got there, is Congress, these states, Texas, Georgia, Florida, they are passing laws basically in the dark
Mhm.
that people don't know about, that are going to affect potentially and impact um, the next presidential cycle.
Right.
And so part of the answer, we have to talk about these dynamics of education, and we have to talk about these dynamics of superiority in the way power is systemically dealt out in our society, if we're going to have an honest conversation and a conversation where there could be some understanding and maybe some change in regards to race and some of these other issues. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that, because I'm kind of thinking out loud, to be honest.
I'm loving it, because I'm absorbing everything that you're saying. I'm at the point now ideologically where I believe that, in all honesty, what we need is a second constitutional convention.
Yeah,
and then in this constitutional convention, there will be people that have a seat at the table that didn't have a seat at the table at the inception of this country.
Yeah.
That and I honestly believe that, even though, like, that a lot of the founding fathers, that they were slaveholders and all of that good stuff, I believe that they believed in the institution, and they believed in the franchise that the institution grants. So that because slaves are free, that Black people would have a seat at this table. Mm-hmm. That women didn't have a seat at the table, that they would have a seat at the table. Mm-hmm. That Latinx and Asian people, mm-hmm. That they'd have a seat at the table. That Native Americans, mm-hmm. holy fuck, would have a seat at the table. Mm-hmm. That our LGBTQ family, yeah, would have a seat at the table. Right. And that when we convene this constitutional convention, that we all bring our input and our grievances to this table. Mm-hmm. And that through this, that the more perfect union that the founders had in mind would finally come to pass. Mm. And you said education. This is really big, because I think that we need to do some things. We need some reforms at the state, local, and federal level that make the legislative process more transparent, mm-hmm. to the average voter. Mm-hmm. Because, one of the things, people talked about term limits, and I remember that Congress passed a term limits bill that Bill Clinton signed it into law. But here's the thing, that Bill Clinton understood. Bill Clinton, I'm going to say this too, Bill Clinton was the smartest politician to ever sit in the White House. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. This guy really had his shit together. He understood it, right? And he understood what parsing the law actually meant. And he understood that even going through the process, how he could subvert it. Because he signed that bill into law knowing full well that it would go to the Supremes and be struck down. And that's exactly what happened. And the thing was that all of the people, all of the legislators, the representatives, and the senators, they knew that this would go to the president. They knew that the president would sign it, and they knew that the Supremes would strike it down. So term limits is not going to happen. But let me share something with you guys that, if you don't know this, consider yourself educated. There's a thing called omnibus legislation. And basically that's saying that if you, Representative Aaron, you have a bill that you want to pass for clean water legislation, but I, Representative Derek, want funding for a freeway overpass named in honor of some veteran of my state that died in Iraq. So I want this bridge. This bridge means a lot to me. It means a lot to my constituents. It means a lot to my community, because money's going to come here. We're going to build infrastructure. So I say, Aaron, if you want my support for your bill, then I need you to attach a rider for what I want to your bill, because your bill has heat. Your bill has momentum.
Yep.
My bill is really going nowhere. Nobody really gives a fuck outside of my state about my bill. But if I attach it to yours, then you get my vote and I get my bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it works. So, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, the part of the catch is to end omnibus legislation, so that every single piece of legislation that flows through Congress has to be read, and of a up or down vote being given on every particular line item. And
Right.
in doing that, that means that the congressional record keepers, because there is a congressional newspaper that goes out that talks about legislation, but they can't go into the omnibus bills, because that gets to be kind of tedious. But here's the thing: if we say every particular piece of legislation now is reported on, and so and we can set this up so that we get text alerts now for every bit of legislation that crosses the House or the Senate floor.
Right.
So now we can be engaged because we know exactly what's coming down. And we
Right.
could say, we could go to our representatives and to our senators and say, no, Representative Aaron, no, that bill is bullshit. Do not vote for that, because if you do, we're going to vote your ass out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is a level of education at the federal, at the state, and at the local level, as far as legislations, referendums, and other and other ballot initiatives, so that everybody is aware of what's going on. I mean, we live in the information age. There's no reason, back in the day, omnibus legislation made sense because it helped to expedite rather things in Congress. But here's the thing: do you know that the founding fathers deliberately created the bicameral legislative model because their take was that everything would happen quickly in the House, but everything would be deliberate in the Senate? That was the model, so that everything has to be considered, and we don't do that now. But if we were to do that, if we were to change this, and listen, your congressmen, your senators, your representatives, they make a grip, y'all. Make them work for their fucking money.
And vote in the midterms, for crying out loud. Don't just vote
Yes.
on TV in the presidential election. Get in.
And not just the midterms, but I cited Thomas P. Tip O'Neill, former Speaker of the House.
Right.
And Tip O'Neill said one of the most profound quotes that I ever heard about politics. He said, all politics is local. Yeah. So it bubbles up. It doesn't go top down. It bubbles up. So whatever you do at the local level, that's what's going to percolate upward. So get involved. Just, pay attention to what's going on at your city council or your township meetings.
Let me just say this.
Go ahead.
Let me say this, because there is a God, how do you combat these thought forms? There's a thought form out there that politics is bad. We don't talk politics. You don't talk religion and you don't talk politics. Well, no. Politics, but that's the mentality out there. Oh, I want to stay away from politics. And I felt the pain of it. I mean, Derek, I was running well upward of 1,200, 1,500 views on Facebook until I started talking about two things: Black Lives Matter, the pandemic, and vaccines, ironically.
You and me both.
And it just plummeted. And all these people, well, you shouldn't talk politics. This is where you live. This is what's affecting how you live. And the root word for politic is related to policy. Yep. So it's not politics when it's just personal bullshit, or this generalized bullshit of, well, the liberals are coming to take your guns. They said Obama was going to take your guns.
Right.
Um, but or this bad mouthing of one another, you know?
Speaking of which, there were gun sales were at a all-time high during the Obama years.
Yeah.
Just to put that out there.
Yeah. I mean, but it's about policies. And so, yeah, all politics are local because at the end of the day, your policies that are more local to you are affecting your life probably in a bigger way, except during a pandemic. And well, even then it's local, right?
Yeah.
But let me say this, and this will be my close, because this will bring it home to what we were talking about. You said this, Derek, you said 2020, that Donald Trump, the end of the evangelical church will not be because of Donald Trump, but because he exposed something like that. I don't remember how
Yep.
you said it. He
Exactly. That's it.
exposed.
He
This
exposed
is,
it.
but it also exposed how rotten it exposed racism and white privilege. And
Yeah.
this is all you need to know. Not you. I'm just saying this. I'm going to sum
No,
this up.
dude, you're
I'm going
good.
to sum this up. If those, and I'm going to be a little crude like you, if those damn Mexicans would come across the border correctly, if they just need to come legally, they need to follow law and order. If that black guy would just submit,
Mhm.
he would just follow the orders of the police. If he wasn't doing whatever to cause trouble anyway, if he just followed the laws, everything would be good, right? I mean, that's
Right.
all we heard. That's all we heard
That's it.
on those two issues. Until the law said put a goddamn mask on. Then you had white people with guns. Remember Michigan?
Oh
Remember
yeah.
the Michigan, wasn't it Michigan where
Yeah,
they
it
were
was
out
Michigan. Yeah.
guns? The
See,
governor?
here's the thing. Michigan was
And
the dress rehearsal for January 6th.
yeah, you're right. And now all of a sudden, don't tread on me. You're not going to tell me to wear a mask. Now, I just want you to see the double standard in that. If you can't see it, and I'm talking to whoever's listening, Mexicans follow the law, black people follow the law, everything will be good. Oh, you want me to wear a mask? Fuck you.
Right.
And then we're going to sit in judgment of riots because finally we see something, sadly, but finally we see something gruesome enough, gory enough, bad enough with this cop deliberately, slowly choking the life out of George Floyd, and it's right
Yeah.
there before our eyes, and we can't face it.
Right.
And so finally, you know, people had had enough, and there was riots, and there was destruction of property, and you know, whatever. And I think, you know, we can argue that all day long. Who's responsible for all that? Doesn't matter. BLM just wants to destroy your cities. They just want to destroy property. They have no respect for law and order. And then January 6th, the very foundation of law and order, our democratic process. And you go
Yeah.
out there and act like fucking goddamn fools,
Yeah. Blue lives didn't matter
smashing
then.
windows and saying you're going to hang the president and taking anything you were sitting there and accusing the BLM movement of doing during the summer, and you took it to the nth degree. The very thing that you're accusing undocumented immigrants of doing, and you're taking it to the nth degree. The very thing that you're accusing black people who get killed by cops of doing, and you took it to the nth degree because you didn't get your guy in office. You're a bunch of fucking hypocrites. And until we can face that, and until we can look at that, until we can look within and say, you know what? I'm the problem. Not in a negative, shaming sort of way, but understand if you're burying your head in the sand and saying, I'm not going to talk about this, I'm not going to bring up these issues, I'm going to talk about politics, then fuck you, because you're more interested in your influence and your power than you are using your influence and power to help people. I don't care how much you think you're a guru or how much you think you're helping people. If you're not speaking up against these injustices and using your influence for good, then fuck you. Take your guru whatever and shove it up your ass, because you're lying. You're doing it for money, and you're doing it for influence, and you're doing it for power. And until enough of us get sick of it and start talking about it, we quit burying our head in the sand. Number one, we get educated, and most importantly, we look at ourselves and say, how have I contributed? How have I contributed to this problem, either through my silence or my violence? Both are bad.
Yeah.
They're two sides of the same coin. You may not be out there. You may not be out there. If you're a Republican and you're watching this, you may not have been one of the assholes that was trying to break into the Capitol building and attacking police officers that you sat there and fucking defended all summer long. You may not be one of the violence, but if you are in silence, you are the same. It's just a different response. And the problem is you're a coward, because the violent people, they at least respond out of the fight or flight response to actually go and do something to make a change. You just bury your fucking head in the sand as a coward, going into silence, coming out of the same fear response that prompted the violence in the first place. All right. All right, Derek.
Dude, I got nothing else to add to that. I mean, listen, silence and violence are two extremes that both produce no result. They are sterile. And the reality is that if you are not, you know, this is the thing that it gave me hope, and it still gives me hope, that when white people saw the George Floyd thing, they were like, when they saw Ahmaud Arbery, they were like, oh, holy fuck, this is really bad. Okay, we've been telling you this for years. And Will Smith said it best. He said, racism isn't new, it's just being filmed. Right. People now are seeing what's going on. They're seeing what has been said. And like you just so eloquently stated,
I don't know if it's eloquent.
No, listen, it was eloquent as fuck, man. The thing is that if you see this and you still walk away with, oh, well, he should have complied. Let me tell you something. I'm going to say this and I'm going to shut up. Is this, people were talking about Blue Lives Matter and All Lives Matter and all of that shit until January 6th, that these rioters killed cops. And so much for Blue Lives Matter.
Yep.
You know, so much for All Lives Matter. Yep. It's like, you know, fuck, Katie bar the door kind of thing. And like you said, that if we're not willing to see things for what they are and educate ourselves, we are in a world of hurt. I mean, honestly, we talk about the end of evangelicalism. We may very well be witnessing the end of the American experiment.
Yeah, it's very possible, Derek. It's very possible.
It's very possible. So that on that note, I'm gonna shut up. But dude, thank you so much for bringing this to the fore. Listen, if you are an evangelical and you're watching this, I want you to know that we hold out an olive branch to you. That there is hope, but the hope is that you can view this logically and intellectually honestly. And if you're willing to do that, then a dialogue that is result producing is actually possible. But if you're willing to bury your head in the sand and ignore this and minimize it and make light of it, then boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, friends of all ages, we are fucked. And that's it, man.
All right, man.
So once again, Aaron, dude, you are just absolutely fucking amazing, man. I love you so much.
Thank you, brother. I love you too.
And for all of you that are watching, we love you too.
I just
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
I
man.
just want to say, I'm kind of ending this one. I'm sober minded on this one, and I don't think I have all the answers. And I've been accused of causing waves the other direction. But damn it, this stuff has to be talked about
It does.
and called out. And so that's my heart. I'm not trying to attack anybody, because I'm after a mindset. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm after a mindset that is controlling people's minds, and as a result of that is perpetuating decades and centuries of injustice. And until we talk about this stuff and go after this stuff, both within ourselves and in our conversations and the way we profile ourselves. So if you're one of these people, I'm going to challenge one thing. If you're one of these people that said, oh, I just don't talk politics because it's just too messy, grow a pair.
Yeah.
Use
Put your big boy pants on.
Sexist. Use a white male sexist phrase. Find some courage, because it's people doing this kind of thing that's going to make a difference from the ground up.
Yep.
So
And here's the thing, that unless the only way that we're going to get to freedom, for true liberty for all people, is to have these discussions, to have them honestly, to have them frankly. They're going to be difficult.
Right.
We're going to walk away from the table, at least temporarily, with hurt feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're not had, then freedom for all cannot happen. And honestly, if there is anyone who is not free, all are not free. And that's my close.
Okay, so my third close. This is as bad as when I was preaching.
As a Baptist close, man. As a Baptist close.
No, I'm done. You said something really powerful. We could be seeing the end of the American experiment. I want people to consider what happens to the world, in all sincerity. What happens to the world if the American experiment fails? In light of the dream of freedom and equality for all.
Jesus. If the American experiment fails, the world plunges into chaos.
It does. Absolutely agree with that.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, my brother. I love you.
Right, love you too.
Can't wait to see you in person one of these times.
Yeah, man. Listen, I'm just going to say this for those of you that are watching. At some point, Aaron and I are going to be able to get together and be in the same room together. And when we do that, the energy just might actually cause like a black hole or something to happen, or some kind of quasar or something. Listen, these Friday discussions, man, these Friday talks are just like, they are the light of my week. No bullshit. So
me too, brother. I can't wait to read the comments. I didn't get to see any of them, but
yeah, I'm going to be. We're going to be responding to all of them, and we love you. I love you.
Yes.
I know Aaron loves you,
Absolutely.
and that's it. Y'all have it's Memorial Day coming up, and remember, it's not just a holiday for barbecue. This is the time where we honor the lives of the men and the women of the United States Armed Services that have paid the ultimate price so that you can have freedom, and so that we can have these kinds of discussions.
Amen.
So honor those this weekend.
Amen. And Derek, hey, as a ex-military person, thank you for your service, brother. I don't know if I've told you that enough, but I appreciate it.
You have, but thanks for telling me again.
Right on, man. All right. We'll see everybody next week.
All right. Love you guys. Bye now.